the first part of the movie, which is the non-spoiler part, doesn't make sense if you don't talk about the spoiler part.
Yeah. If you go the route of completely over the top violence and then you have that reveal and it's like, oh yeah, the imagination makes things so much worse than what it usually is.
It's insane, right?
Art the Clown.
I'm something different.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another Modern Horror Movie Talk. I'm your host, Tyler Nichols, and we have very special guest, editor-in-chief of JoeBlow.com, Chris Bumbray. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Tyler, how you doing, man?
Oh, you know, just trying to get through this month of May without many horror releases. April, there were so many good ones, and then this month it's just been pretty.
Your next big one, I think, is the Boogeyman,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which you got to see, did you not?
I did. I saw it at CinemaCon. I'm actually interviewing Sophie Thatcher next week because I mean, I'm allowed to say what I thought. Like, I liked it. I don't think it's amazing, like people have said, but I could see how it would do well in theaters, kind of similar to how Smile did. And I think the moment is right for it to come out, especially with Sophie Thatcher.
Yeah.
I would have held it until Halloween, though. It would have been a good Halloween one. But then again, I saw footage though from the Exorcist, the new Exorcist reboot at CinemaCon, because they showed us the first trailer, right? And it hasn't come out yet. And that looks really good. And I think that's going to be the big like Halloween, scare the shit out of everybody one. It's going to be that one.
See, I'm a little worried just because Halloween Ends really soured me on David Gordon
Tell me about
Green.
it. Yeah. Tell me about it. I was there. I was like, what is this? The scene when they're like on the motorcycle and like the synth wave is playing. It's like, is this Drive? Like, it didn't make any sense.
And then when you realize that Corey would have had to drive Michael on his motorcycle for them to get to that one house, like,
holding on to like the back of him like this with the music playing.
It is so silly. But
I like the first two though. I did like the first two, so it's weird.
But that's I guess that's the reason I'm worried about The Exorcist is because it wasn't just announced as one film. It's announced as a trilogy. And he's already said of how he gets bored making the same movie, where then I'm like, he might do a great first Exorcist, but second, third, I don't know.
I mean, that's probably what's going to happen, to be honest.
We have a little segment on the show where we talk about what we're drinking. So, Chris, what are you drinking?
I am having a gin and tonic, a pretty light gin and tonic, because I was telling you I'm on a chat show after this.
Nice. Very, very nice.
Gin and tonic, just a single shot this time with my tonics that I like, my cucumber tonic water that I got at this specialty grocery store around me. It costs a fortune, but whatever. I do like my gin and tonics after a rough day. But I only drink Thursday to Sunday, so you're lucky this is on a Thursday because I don't drink Monday to Wednesday usually.
Then you would have been having water, which we don't like happen on the show, so that's a good thing. What kind of gin do you have?
The cheapest. It's very cheap gin. It's a gin called Maxi Gin that's so cheap. It's in a plastic container. I usually buy better stuff like a Quebec gin that I like called Ungava or Gordon's or Romeo's gin. But I don't know why. I just felt cheap at the SAQ. It was on special. It was like $20 for a bottle. I was like, whatever.
I actually just had the it's not Ryan Reynolds gin anymore because I think he sold it, but that Aviation. Yeah.
Aviation's good. I was once so nervous doing an interview. I was interviewing Daniel Craig for No Time to Die, and I'm a huge Bond fan, right? And I was freaking out beforehand. And I just seen that movie, Another Round, where it was like small amounts of alcohol can make you better. And my fiance, she was like, hey, why don't you have that? Like, why don't you have a shot of gin or something like that? And I was like, oh, cool. And I had one of those little baby bottles of Aviation gin and I just cracked it up. Great interview.
I think that's actually what I did before my first ever interview because I was also very, very nervous. And I'm like, have a shot of whiskey or something.
I think it's not a bad idea, to be honest. As long as you keep it to like one shot, it's fine. Like, I think, if you do too many, then you start to slur and stuff. Yeah. But I think like a single shot, there's nothing really wrong with that because if it steadies your nerves.
Yeah. As long as you're not slurring and making it seem like you're best friends with a stranger celebrity, then I think you're usually good with it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's like we've had people in the past that have done that, and that's not a good thing. It's all weird. It's like a thin fine line sometimes, but I mean, everybody that we have works for us, I think, strikes the right tone though.
Yeah, I agree. And so I was actually going to make a Bloody Mary today because I had all the Bloody Mary stuff, but it is so hot. It's like 87 out. And yeah, it is. It's insanely hot here in Michigan. And so I just made a vodka squirt and frozen fruit drink. I've had it on the show. Those are always
good.
Very refreshing.
I like a Bloody Caesar. Have you ever had one of those? Because that's the Canadian version of a Bloody Mary, and I love just those. Told
me about this like 2 months ago.
Yeah. Because I was the one who told him about that. It was we were at VidCon, and I was telling him about Bloody Caesar's better. So basically, what it is instead of V8 juice or something like that, you take it's Clamato, Mott's Clamato. So it's a little clam juice, and it's good. V8 juice, I'm not a fan of because I always think. Did you ever see Ninja 3, The Domination?
Yes, I did.
So when she takes the V8 juice and she like pours it all over her like sexually and stuff like that. And I remember watching that with my fiance. We were both like, whoa, like so grossed out. So whenever we see V8 juice, we always think of like Ninja 3, The Domination. So yeah.
That's amazing. Well, so today we're talking about, because like I said earlier in the show, there's not that many very horror releases in the month of May. And so Hypnotic from Robert Rodriguez released, and this is more of a thriller, but it seemed like a good thing to cover on the show. And so what's your history with Robert Rodriguez? Like, what do you think of his films?
Hit and miss, I mean, I think it is like that for most people though. So, I mean, for me, I look back pretty fondly at, Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn, like the old school stuff. I really like Desperado, although I find like the third act of that movie just kind of falls apart. But I've always liked Banderas in it. And Once Upon a Time in Mexico had great stuff, but then some really stupid stuff too. For me, I think my favorites of his I like From Dusk Till Dawn a lot, but I mean, I consider that kind of Tarantino at this point.
Yeah.
I like Planet Terror. There's a lot of his stuff that I don't like though. Like I don't like the Spy Kids movies. I don't like the kid stuff that he did. But I really liked Alita: Battle Angel. That was the thing. Like I wasn't expecting to like that movie at all. But I thought that was actually really great. Yeah. So I'm more or less a fan of his, but I'm not a devotee. I like the first Sin City, but I haven't watched it in a long time because I feel like it wouldn't hold up very well. And I hate the sequel, A Dame to Kill For. And I like the graphic novels too.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand the sequel. I thought it was terrible.
I will say I watched Sin City about a year ago and was so sad at how much it does not hold up.
Yeah, that's my fear with that. So it's one of those things like maybe I should just better leave it in the past. I mean, I was a big Clive Owen fan at the time, and it was also that point when like Mickey Rourke was making his comeback, and he was and it was very exciting to see him and stuff, and that's all kind of worn off a little bit. So yeah, I'm kind of I'm not so eager to revisit those.
Yeah, I totally get that because I'm right there with you. I love Grindhouse, and the Machete movies are really dumb fun, and
I like the second Machete. I hated the first Machete.
See, I like how dumb fun. Like I like when something is just dumb like that. It doesn't, as long as it's like completely dumb, I can get along. I can get on board with it. But I actually really like the El Mariachi trilogy because I'm not sure if you ever read it, but he has this book called Rebel Without a Crew.
Oh yeah, that's a classic. Sure.
It is phenomenal and is one of the books that got me really into filmmaking. And so even though I haven't been super into a lot of Rodriguez's movies, I still hold him so highly because of that book.
I've got a couple of like the classics here. Like I've got Kid Stayed in the Picture. I've got Adventures in the Screen Trade. I've got Easy Riders and Raging Bulls. That's a really good one. Down and Dirty Pictures. A couple of those, like my Bibles. Yeah, that is a great one though.
Yeah, the one my most recent addition to that is Tarantino's Cinema Speculation.
I love Cinema Speculation. I love his podcast as well. His podcast is great.
Yes, Video Archives has just been phenomenal. I had no idea. I always knew that Quentin was so knowledgeable, but I also didn't really know that much about Roger Avery other than like the bad stuff. So it's been cool.
But it's touching to see how they've kind of gotten back together, though, how their friendship has been rekindled, because they had a feud for a really long time, but they it sounds like they both get a lot out of each other, now. And, Tarantino is a really nice guy, though. That's the thing. Like I met him years ago at a party for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he was genuinely a kind person. like he would come and talk to you, and you'd talk to him for a while, and he wasn't like in a rush to get rid of you. You know, he was just humble and down to earth. It's one of those things, if you go to him and you're like this, he's not going to like you. But if you go up to him and you like talk to him about movies and stuff, and you have like a really cool question or music, he's really into that, and he'll be super cool with you. So I like him, and I think it comes across well on the podcast too.
I've always said that if I were to ever meet Tarantino, I would need to have a conversation with him as to why he likes the Fog remake so much, because I do not understand.
John Fallon had that exact conversation with him, though. That was the thing. Did you ever hear about that?
I did not.
At a party, and somebody was like, I think it was like Greg Nicotero or something like that was like, hey, whoa, Fallon, don't question QT like that. And then, but Tarantino was like, no, it's okay. And he had like some good reasoning, and he was down with like talking about it, which was, some of his takes on movies are weird, but but I like that, that's kind of the charm of it sometimes.
Yeah, he's honestly the kind of person that I think I would kind of worry debating, because I think that he would somehow change my opinion on a movie where I'd be like, you do have a good point about that. Crap.
I disagree with a lot that's in cinema speculation, but I love the book, and I like reading about it, and I like listening to him even when I disagree about the movie. Like, he talked about Star 80 on one of his podcasts, and I really like that movie a lot. And his take on it was very different because he knows the Stratton family, right? And it was and Peter Bogdanovich. And I found that, like, for me, I was kind of, I can understand why he felt the way he did, but I didn't agree with him in the end. And I think that's good, but I still liked listening to him.
Let's get into some Hypnotic.
Yeah, because you and I might totally disagree on this one.
Yeah, we could easily disagree on it.
Yeah.
A detective investigates a mystery involving his missing daughter and a secret government program.
And for those that I guess want to see it or want a brief spoiler, you can see Chris's review on the site, because he actually reviewed this. And we're going to do, just like anything, we're going to do a non-spoiler section and then a spoiler section. But this non-spoiler section will be very, very brief, because this movie's already been out for a week at this point. And
there's not much you could say about it that's not a spoiler, like, it's kind of like, because it's like, the first part of the movie, which is the non-spoiler part, doesn't make sense if you don't talk about the spoiler part. Anyway.
It also comes across as like very generic if you just talk about the first part. I feel like I've heard of this movie before.
I was kind of like, what even is this? And then it was kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that like nepotism is a hot topic right now in Hollywood in terms of like the Nepo baby. But I love how Rodriguez utilizes his kids as part of his film crew.
There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind a little nepotism sometimes. I mean, and I think they do good work. It's like people are always giving James Gunn shit for his wife too, but she's like a decent actress. I find that it's always going to exist, and like, I mean, we just talked about the VO Archives podcast. I mean, Gala Avery, Roger Avery's daughter, is part of it, and she's really good. If somebody's really talented and knows what they're doing. Hey, I mean, Rebel Rodriguez and they grew up. The mom was a producer, and it's like this is his family business, and he's passing it along to his kids. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, because I mean, who's going to teach them all this stuff better than their father in this role? So yeah, I've always liked that he utilizes them so much. And on this film, I wrote it down: Rebels, the composer; Racer Max is the producer; Sid is a special effects technician; Rhiannon does storyboards; and Rocket helped out with editing.
Well, and it's also very cost efficient, right? When you're making a movie on this scale pretty cheaply. Like, I mean, it cost me like $60 million, which isn't a lot of money these days. And it was shot at the height of COVID. So, it's kind of like they were able to do quite a bit with like a pretty low budget. But also the fact is they had the whole sound stage. They just redressed stages from Alita Battle Angel, and it works.
Did they really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the stuff that's in Mexico is Alita Battle Angel sound stages. Kier was there, and I'll send you the video, and you could lay it in. He was walking around. It was like the Iron City or whatever it was. That's Mexico. They just redressed it for Hypnotic. There's a lot of scenes in the movie because the stage is still set. It's all Troublemaker Studios. It's his big sound stage. If you read the press notes, everything was shot at Troublemaker Studios except for a couple of exteriors in Austin, and that was it. They were doing it during COVID. It was shot quite a while ago too. So, they had very limited resources for this movie.
There was one moment that was outside of what looked like a studio, and I'm like, I bet that's Troublemaker Studios.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about it. That whole kind of plays into the plot as well, though.
Yes. Yeah. And before we...
it's very meta. It's meta in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Very, very meta. And I know that he's had this script written since 2002, and it's been a passion project.
I don't know if I believe that. I feel like it's been written since 2008, since he saw Inception.
Yeah. Oh, well, and they also said it was rewritten. So I wonder how much of it was just like he had a hypnotism movie that then evolved into this.
He went and saw Inception and he was like, wait a second.
The hypnotism in this movie is like hypnotism turned up to 11. It's some kind of magic. They're like X-Men.
The Division.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that kind of stuff. And like Affleck is really great in the role. I realized watching this that I haven't seen him in anything that's like Batman in ages, because a lot of his stuff.
I like the Affleck. I mean, I really enjoyed Tender Bar, and I enjoyed Air a lot, which I just saw recently. I thought Air was great.
See, all stuff I've missed out on. So I'm like,
I interviewed him for the Tender Bar, and I had interviewed him before. I met him on the set of Justice League when he was dressed as Batman with just the cowl off. And it was interesting. I spoke to him there briefly because I was on the set visit of like the first version of Justice League.
Oh, so it was before he was miserable.
Yeah, well, he seemed to be okay at that point. Okay. Yeah,
I think it was the reshoots that he was miserable.
Yeah, then 3 years later, the movie came out, and then it was like not the same Ben that I met.
Everything about him in this, I kept seeing a lot of similarities in terms of the Ben Affleck that I've seen in a lot of these DC movies. But I don't know. I liked what he brought to the role. It's not like he's having to do anything too extensive in terms of heavy lifting. But
when we get into spoilers, I'll give you my take on his part, but I don't want to do it until we get into spoilers.
Well, last non-spoiler thing that I want to talk about is just that the supporting cast is really good, from William Fichtner to Jackie Earle Haley, Jeff Fahey. If anything, I wanted more of them.
I remember Jeff Fahey from this TV movie I used to like as a kid called Parker Lewis. I remember I used to love that. He was like a pilot for a show that never went anywhere. And Sketch Artist 1 and 2. I always thought he was cool. Him and Michael Biehn. I always like the two of them.
I know him from Lawnmower Man.
Of course, Lawnmower Man. Okay, well, you didn't tell me though. Did you like this movie?
So I actually really enjoyed it. It was very fun.
Because so did I. Yeah, yes. So did I. I mean, it's not a masterpiece, but it's entertaining. It's entertainment.
Dumb fun.
Very, very much. Very much. So every review that's out there are talking about how, cliche it is and how like it's so by the numbers. I feel like these people haven't seen the last part of the movie though, because everything that happens beforehand is supposed to be cliche. Mm-hmm. Like I remember because he's acting out like a really generic kind of detective fantasy. Like there's a part where he's on the rooftop and he goes, "You crooked bastards," like with the cops. Like it was so cheesy. I remember I was watching it with my fiance and I groaned. I was like, oh. But then it made sense after like it started to pick up that like everything that we're seeing up to now is a construct, as they call it in the movie. And it's a game that he's running over and over and over again because they're trying to find his daughter who has all these powers. It goes from being kind of like this. The first scene is almost like a Heat ripoff, or like it reminded me a bit of The Hidden, where all this like carnage is happening. And, it reminded me, it kind of switched into being almost like Scanners at a certain point. Right. It started to really remind me of Scanners.
Yeah.
And I liked that. That was when I started to really enjoy the movie. And if I hadn't been for like the first half of the movie, I thought it was, whatever. I didn't think it was great. I thought at least it moved fast, though. Like I like a 90-minute movie. But then I started to really like it once they got into the second half. And I started to realize that, the reason things look cheap are because they're just they've got him in the backyard, just kind of walking around the set of Troublemaker Studios.
Yeah.
So it kind of all started to make sense and coalesce at a certain point. But I do feel like sometimes when you read reviews, it seems like the critics didn't stay for the whole movie.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that people are not enjoying this movie because
some people are, though. Some people are, and it got into Cannes midnight. And the fact that it got into the Cannes Film Festival at midnight goes to show you that there is a contingent out there that actually really likes the movie, because that's not an easy festival to get into. It's the hardest festival in the world to get into. So there is a contingent that likes this movie. And even its work in progress screenings, there were some very positive reviews, some very negative reviews. But I also think people like to beat up on Ben Affleck. You know, I think people have always liked to beat up on Ben Affleck. Because, you know, he gets to go home to J-Lo every night. And before that, Ana de Armas. And before that, Jennifer Garner, you know. But
yeah, he's been killing it for years. And this movie,
in more ways than one.
Well, and there's definitely some stuff in this that I think that the whole reason that there are going to be people that can't enjoy it is just because they can't get past the hypnotism stuff. Which
I mean, it's the MacGuffin, though. You kind of have to, like, it's if you can't get past it. Look, I mean, in this movie, you have to realize that hypnotism, it's like a superpower, you know, and it could do literally anything.
It's genetics.
Yeah. Well, they're like scanners or Jedi or something like that in the movie. And if you can't get past that aspect of the movie, don't even bother watching it.
I think the main thing for me was that with so many films that have a twist, I see the twist coming. I
didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming at all.
No, and I think it's because, like you were saying, where it's like, oh, I just saw a generic movie, like just seeing, it's just like they're doing these generic things where then I'm just like, oh, I mean, yeah, whatever. I'm just watching this generic action thriller that then it kind of gave me these unrealistic or these weird expectations that then it kind of flips it on its head. Because I had no idea that with the Alice Braga stuff that was happening, I was still just absolutely shocked. And every time they would do, one thing I liked was how they would do character switches where 1 second it would be one person, the camera would move away, move back, and it was someone else. I really enjoyed that because, again, I didn't see most of the time that happened. I didn't see it coming.
But they also made it like relatively easy to follow and not too complicated either.
Yeah.
You know, I found it was kind of like, you know, I wrote in my review, it was like the kind of movie that I would have rented on VHS in like the 80s or 90s. But the problem with the movie, I think, is it's getting like such a weird release. And if you read what happened with the movie, is that it was produced by this studio, Solstice Studios, which went bankrupt during COVID. And they were supposed to be like a mini major where they were going to do like these relatively big budget movies. And they financed their movies by international pre-sales. And they were able to raise something like $60 million on pre-sales. But the caveat was that the movie had to go out in 2,000 screens. And if it didn't go out in 2,000 screens, they had to refund everybody. So the reason the movie now is coming out on 2,000 screens without any kind of promotion or anything like that is because contractually they had to find a company that would put it out in 2,000 screens. They can't afford to put it out. They know it's not going to do well because they have no marketing budget. It's basically a suicide release. They're putting it out and then they're going to eventually, I think they've got a deal to stream it on Peacock or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's the 2,000 screen release. It's contractually obligated because if they don't do it, then they don't get back the $60 million. They'll have to pay back the $60 million they put into it. And they're not spending any extra money.
That makes so much sense. I haven't seen anything about this.
And that's the reason that Netflix didn't pick it up. And that's the reason that none of these studios picked it up, because if they did pick it up, they would have had to have paid $60 million. They would have had to have paid back all the investors. And it ain't worth $60 million. You know, it's one of those things. It probably could have gotten a decent deal if it had gone to like Sundance or something like that. It would have gotten maybe $10 million or something. Yeah. But that's just not how it works because of the way that the movie was financed. So it goes to the one company that's willing to put it out, but they don't really have any money to put into it because you're not going to spend. It would cost twice what the movie cost to just to promote it in order to give it like a decent opening. So that's why they've kind of dumped it.
Well, that makes sense because my theater that's a block away from me has Hypnotic playing, but it's playing two showtimes.
Yeah.
Opening weekend.
because that's what they did. They had to open it on a number of screens, but they're probably just booking like one showtime per screen or something like that. And it's not even opening at all in Canada.
That's insane. And it's too bad because the movie's so much fun. Like, it's fun. It doesn't deserve this.
It would have done well, though, if it had gone straight to streaming. It would have been a hit. I think, like, and, you know, it sets up a sequel at the end, you know, in the little post-credits scene. And you might have gotten that if it didn't, but now it's obviously it's just gonna, you know, and it's sad because it's seen as like a flop, but it's not necessarily, because there was no way the movie was ever going to make any money.
I can't imagine that the back end was that hard. Like the any of the costs for this would have been minimal in terms of them being able to turn a profit in some kind of minimal way if they just did some kind of advertising. Again, I didn't even know this movie was coming out until a week and a half ago.
I had to fill in for the box office predictions this weekend for Brad, who usually writes them for us because he's on a cruise. And it was like every site that I went to, box office forecasters, they were all saying that like nobody has any forecasting data on it because nobody even really knew how many screens it was going to come out on. They have a contractually obligated number, and that's the amount of screens that's coming out on, but it's going to be like 1 or 2 showtimes. And it's too bad because they're trying to grassroots market it. That's why they had Kier out to Troublemaker and stuff. But, you know, I mean, there's only so much that can do.
Especially right before release, like you got to do it a little bit.
There's not much they can do, and you know you don't see Affleck out there promoting it. But the thing about that is, for Affleck, it's embarrassing too if a movie comes out and it does, you know, no business, because he's supposed to be a box office star, right? Yeah. So I can see why he's not. He's probably just ignoring it, pretending it never happened. You know,
and it's kind of the opposite of Air, which is also coming out around the same time, where that was supposed to be streaming, that then got such good test screenings.
They put a ton of money into it, though, Amazon, because they know that when a movie plays streaming, it's more valuable if it played theatrically because it's seen as a real movie, whereas a streaming movie is seen as a streaming movie. So Air now, it goes to Prime. It came out on Prime on Friday, and now everybody's going to watch it because it's an actual movie, you know, as opposed to, you know, this low rent streaming thing.
I mean, I think that's a big reason that Citadel is doing so well on Amazon right now, because I don't know about you, but the last month of going to the theater, Citadel they were pumping that into all of the pre-show.
They don't promote those movies here in Canada, though. That's the thing. There is no promotion for Citadel. I haven't even seen, I think in Toronto there is, but in Quebec is kind of separate from everything else, right? Because we're like a very French, you know, province, and there's been no advertisement for it all here. Even if you go to the movies, we get movie trailers. That's it. We don't really get streaming stuff. But it's also weird. Like, I don't go to many movies anymore that I pay for. Like, everything I go to is a press screening, and they have like, I'm going to Fast X next, but it's like they'll just show the movie like randomly. They won't show anything beforehand. Last movie I paid for was, I went to the Rep Cinema, to the Cinémathèque Québécois, and I watched they had a friend of mine collects 35 millimeters for them, and they had a 35 millimeter print of this old Clint Eastwood movie, Heartbreak Ridge, from the 80s. So that's the last movie I actually paid money to go see. That was last Thursday.
Nice. See, I have my local theater. It's like a block away. They have this deal where it's $20 a month, and you can see 3 movies a week, including IMAX.
They don't do that here, and I think that's a good thing. Like, these subscription services, they should do more of those.
Yeah. I mean, there's times where I can't make it to a movie that then I have a screening for, or have that I already reserved my seat for. And I will just move my seat to like the side and not go. But then they're still getting my box office ticket. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where it's like, I'm still supporting the movie, or it's like, cause sometimes I'm just too busy.
I feel like I'm kind of spoiled because I do get a lot of screeners, right? And I get to see stuff before it opens. Or they sent me an Unnamed Movie, which I can't say what it is, but it's coming out this theater from, like, you remember I gave you a link for a movie once, and it's like, they just want your opinion on it, see what you think of it. I got one recently that I'll tell you I'll tell you off the show, for a movie that's coming out in like 2,000 screens this summer, and it was very clearly like a first cut. Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
There's more. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about with this movie that I thought was so fun. Oh wait, I guess there's 2 things. So there's a scene where Affleck has scissors, and we don't know if he's being like properly hypnotized or not.
That's his De Palma Hitchcock ripoff scene. Yeah.
Yes, and I love it. There's no tension in this movie outside of pretty much that scene, and I thought that scene was just so well done.
I thought he might stab her, which was kind of like, oh, okay, you know, like I didn't know. You know, I thought there might be some kind of reveal where Fichtner's the good guy and Affleck's the bad guy. Like I didn't know what to expect. I'm glad they didn't go down that road. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. The only thing that annoyed me was that when the end credits came up and you had the hypnotic thing, like I hate the faux Nolan shit that he's doing in the movie that he doesn't have the money for. Like, and even like the bending city stuff, like it's just kind of like the low rent version of Nolan. That I really didn't like. I wish he didn't have that in the movie.
The after credits scene really just threw me off because I was just like, wait, am I watching a Marvel movie?
Scene it was really stupid. And it's like, come on.
Because they established that this girl she's like the ultimate hypnotist because she was born from two amazing hypnotists, so then how was Fichtner able to trick her? Like
that was just them having like a crazy faith in the movie where they're like, yeah, we're gonna have sequels, and think, okay, sure. It also reminded me a bit of Firestarter, a little bit of Firestarter. She's like Firestarter.
Yeah, I would do the remake.
Well, something to tell you about the remake. This is interesting. So, Infinity Pool. I was at the party for that at Sundance, and the guy who shot Infinity Pool also shot Firestarter, Kareem Hussein. And I know him a little bit from Fantasia because he's a Montrealer, and he's a really interesting guy. And he was saying that Firestarter, the original cut of that movie was great, and then it got completely changed. The version that came out in theaters was not all what was shot originally. And he said the first cut of that movie was actually really cool, but they really changed it. So he was pissed though because the Razzie nominations had just come out, and he was like, "That's such fucking mean low blow," you know, and they're nominating the girl. And he said it's just a very different version of the movie was originally supposed to come out and ended up getting changed. And he said it was actually really good. So who knows? Because I thought it sucked. I mean, I told him, I'm like off the record, I thought it really fucking sucked. Yeah. And he's like, well, yeah, because you saw the sucky version. There was a good version of it that didn't come out.
I don't know. There's ways for them to have done it where it wouldn't have been nearly as. I think the CGI was a big problem. They like CGI enhanced everything.
And it was so cheap. Like, you know, the original movie had real fire, you know, so it was kind of exciting. I didn't mind like the cast. I thought the cast was great. I like Michael Greyeyes a lot, you know, in that role, but also they were trying to set up a franchise, and I really hate it when people do that in movies. Like, let's just get one good movie out there and then take it from there.
Yeah,
which I thought Hypnotic was doing until the very end.
Yeah, it seemed like it. Well, and there's one other thing that I thought that just like entertained me to no end was that I thought Affleck was such a dick for the moment he walks into the house, he knocks down his daughter's awesome domino design. Where it's like, what? Who walks into a house, sees this, and then is just like, oop. Like,
my fiance, she kept telling me that, like, imagine setting that up had to be CGI, because if somebody would knock it over and they'd have to redo it and set it up again, and how elaborate it is, like somebody's dog runs through and knocks it over, it had to be CGI. But you know, she really enjoyed it too. That's another thing worth saying. And she's not, you know, she does like silly movies though. She's really into like she really likes. You know, I've introduced it during the pandemic. I went through like a phase where I was having a hard time. So I just medicated myself by watching the Canon movies. So I introduced her to like the oeuvre of Monahem Golan and Jordan Globus. And then she just like started to really love the Canon movies. I guess it was one of those things like, you know, like in Rolling Thunder, he says, you learn to love the rope, you know, and it was like that. And she learned to love Canon movies. It's the way I am with Vanderpump Rules, because she loves to watch that. It's like you learn to love the rope. But it was like a Canon movie, kind of. That's kind of why I liked it. It was just like one of those, like a stupid 80s generic movie. And I miss those sometimes. There's room for those.
Yeah. If anything, it kind of reminded me of a lot of the movies that we would see in like the 90s in terms of quick 90 minutes and, you know, fun little twists, a lead, you know, A-list actor, and just some fun character actors. And that's all you really need. But
I wish it was more gruesome though. Like I liked the kills at the beginning were kind of cool, but I wish they'd gone further with that and really gone like after that R rating and made it like really brutal. That would have been the icing on the cake. You know, like if they had gone for like Scanners type deaths, you know, where people's heads are blowing up, that would have been amazing.
It was just gunshots, and so many of the kills that we see aren't even actually kills. They're fake outs.
Which is why they should have been gorier, though. That's the thing. It should have been like these hideous like versions that he's seeing. That would have been really cool.
Because then too,
that was kind of like that. The guy's taking his hand off.
Yeah,
that was kind of cool.
He's pulling at the handcuff. Yeah. But then also if you go the route of completely over the top violence, and then you have that reveal, and it's like, oh yeah, the imagination makes things so much worse than what it usually is. So like you have that explanation.
Yeah.
Was this PG-13 though?
No, it was R. It was R, which is why I thought they should have gone further, because it is rated R. And you'd think that, but you think that they would kind of like, you know, go a little bit crazy with the violence, you know. And I like that when they go.
Point? There was no violence.
I like it when you go, it could have easily been PG-13, but I like it when they go, you know, when you get extreme with things.
There was probably no room for it either in terms of in the story, but some kind of like sex scene would have worked out well.
They were teasing one up. Like it should have been totally like what they had the blue lighting going, you know, like it was kind of like that kind of thing. It's a weird thing though. Hollywood seems so averse to any kind of sex or physical intimacy in movies though. Like, you know, in the one with Jonah Hill, you know, the CGI kiss, like it's just so lame. You know, you never see that anymore in movies. And I remember like, on the Criterion channel, they've got like the erotic thrillers thing coming up, and I just remember like, you know, Color of Night from when I was a kid. Bruce Willis, like how over the top sex movies were like back then, you know, and I miss those days.
That's what I'm ready for a resurgence of, is just that style of film, because I'm right there with you. I love like a De Palma 90s sex thriller, like is what I want to come back.
Double.
Yes.
Like Body Double. Apparently Nicole Kidman is doing one now because she's a fan of that genre. And she was like, let's do like a movie like this for Amazon. And she's like with her and Harris Dickinson, where she falls in love with like a young guy. And apparently that one's going to be like pretty over the top. You know, she's never shied away from nudity. And I'd like that. That'd be really cool if they did that.
I'm hoping any time that I've gotten my hopes up that I'm going to get some kind of De Palma like sexual thriller, it doesn't end up happening. Like that Ben Affleck Ana de Armas movie where it was like,
it was way too tame. I was like, you know, it's tame. Like they said in Bachelor Party, I don't like my filth this clean, you know?
Yeah, that's not. I wanted more.
And that was Adrian Lyne too, so I was expecting like Fatal Attraction, and then they've got the new Fatal Attraction show where there's like no sex in it.
Yeah, what's even the point? It's on and on Paramount Plus too, which is like your grandma's network.
No, there's legitimately more sex on Yellowstone. Like there's actually nudity on Yellowstone. You know, you don't get that otherwise.
Well, is there any final thoughts? I guess you already had your review up with a rating, but just tell the folks here what you rated it.
I gave it like a 7. I was kind of waffling between a 6 and a 7. You know, we used to do 0.5s, but we don't, for some reason we don't do them anymore. So I would have given it a 6.5 in the old days, but I was comfortable giving it a 7. You know, will I watch it again? Probably not. But then again, I don't watch most things again either these days. Like it was just kind of a good in one ear out the other movie, and I like the efficiency of it. I get sick of watching movies that are 2.5 hours long. Like I watched on Netflix not long ago for work, We Have a Ghost, and like that was a movie that should have been 85 minutes long, and it was 2.5 hours, and it made me want to just like slit my wrists almost. You know, it was too much. And I hate that.
I've said it on this show so many times where every time I'm like, yeah, probably had about 15, 20 minutes that needed cut out. And
every movie. And it's just like, why don't you cut it down? You know, and I'm always impressed when I see something that's lean, you know, like it just came out that Rise of the Beast is going to be 1 hour and 57 minutes. And people are acting like that's a bad thing. And it's like, guys, Raiders of the Lost Ark was 115 minutes. And it's the greatest adventure movie ever made. You know, these movies don't need to be 2.5 hours long. No. Let's have some pace and propulsiveness. You know, most of the great action movies, The Terminator is 100 minutes. You know, and it's like all those movies from the 80s and 90s. Very few of them are over 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. You know, movies don't need to be as long as it seems to be that. You know, all the Marvel movies are 2.5 hours now. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was 2.5 hours, and I liked it, but it's like,
The first hour there was some setup that they could have easily gotten rid of.
There's a 20-minute chunk in the middle of that movie that could have come out. Yeah. Everything that's set on like the Earth 2 alternate thing didn't need to be in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought they had a very strong start and a very strong end, and all the stuff with Rocket and his like animal friends, that was all amazing. But then like there's like a 20-minute segment of that movie that could have been just completely cut out, and it would have been 2 hours long and it would have been perfect. It would have been one of the best Marvel movies ever if they had done that.
But I will say that soundtrack is so good that I plan on seeing it again in theaters just to be able to experience it.
I still really liked it. I did, you know, and I'm a big animal lover, and I thought that was kind of interesting that he did like his version of Plague Dogs almost, you know, like that was like it was heavy to watch. But I remember I was walking out with like, you know, the writer Sean O'Connell. He writes for a couple other things, and I was like he's the guy who wrote the book Release the Snyder Cut, and him and I were talking in Vegas because we saw it at CinemaCon, and I was like, it's great, but man, kids are gonna be really upset when they see that movie. They're gonna be like hysterical.
Yeah,
I'm good friends with Perry Nemiroff. Do you know her from Collider?
Yeah. And
she was telling me that she was like hysterical for like about a half hour of the movie, and that's why they cut it up into different blocks, because it was so sad.
I mean, I guess that makes sense, because there's the Rocket stuff. It comes in and out throughout.
I was getting choked up.
Sad.
I was getting choked up, but I also liked that the villain was like the most evil villain ever, you know, and that was great. That was really good.
Well, and I think that the most brilliant thing that movie does is, because I went and watched the first film after, and there's a scene with Rocket yelling at Drax in a bar, where goes about, I didn't ask to be made this way, and there's like so much emotion to it, and the scene is so much better after you've seen 3, and you know that Gunn didn't plan for any of this. He didn't even know the High Evolutionary was going to be the villain. You know what I mean? So it's like, it just kind of shows that like sometimes you don't even have to plan, and a magic can still, you know, come.
If there are superhero fans listening to this, Tyler and I have both seen The Flash, but we're not allowed talking to you about it.
Hey, I'm allowed to say that I liked it.
Yeah, we both liked it. We talked about it off the air, but yeah, we both seen The Flash.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, I when I went and saw Guardians, the first trailer was The Flash, and I just wanted to stand up and be like, I saw that. I saw it. I know what it is. Yeah.
We're in the club giving each other knowing looks.
Yes, it's so much fun to even know. But and well, Chris, thank you so much for joining me this week and talking some Hypnotic. And next week, I am actually going to be talking Last Night in Soho with Andrew Hatfield, because we're wrapping up our month of nothing. So then after Last Night in Soho, the next week will likely be The Boogeyman, which I am very excited for. Scott Pilgrim is it's upper tier. I will watch that multiple times a year. obviously, you know, I'm an editor, and Scott Pilgrim from an editing standpoint is just mind-blowing.
I never liked Scott Pilgrim because I couldn't relate to the story of a nice Canadian boy who falls in love with an American girl with crazy hair with psycho ex-boyfriends, until it literally happened to me, because my fiance is an American girl with purple hair, tattoos, and crazy ex-boyfriends, until I became Scott Pilgrim. So there you go. There you go. And then I watched the movie again, and I was like, huh.
Did you like it? Did you like it?
I liked it much more.
Good.
And it's one of her favorite movies, which is interesting.
That's awesome. That's what I like to hear. And that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for joining me, Chris, and you guys take it easy.